So I think we can get started. I guess the purpose for today, and really it's all about how can we look at these three interesting examples of clusters taking a role in the circular economy, or practices that might be able to impact not only that sector but other sectors too, like with the Access Cities program and all of them, to be honest. So yeah, the purpose for today, we've only got 56 minutes. We might run over slightly, but really just to hear a little bit from the three of you, the sort of general overview on what the program is. You know, minutes of talking and maybe some slides, and then we can open up the floor to some questions, and really mostly just the other clusters that are joining us today. But I think there's going to be other participants as well, and we will be recording this so that we can then share it on social medias, and people can follow up later on, because I know that we're very close to Christmas, so a lot of people are trying to get things finished. But maybe I could hand it over to kick things off. And sorry, I didn't do proper introductions for everybody, but I think in the interest of time, it would be nice just for you to all take it away. So I will hand it over to Eli Prins from Cleantech Delta, and he can do some explaining on the programs they're running over there.
Sure. Thanks, James, and also for setting this up. I think it's nice to exchange some valuable learnings with other regions to see on this quite novel topic, to see how it's going there and see if we can learn from each other. I'll just try to share my screen. We see. I normally use Teams, but this will also work, I guess. So I'll put it in presentation mode.
Perfect.
Is all well now? You can see the slide?
Yeah, yes. Looks good.
Perfect. All right, so one short introduction slide about Cleantech Delta, who we are as an organization. So we are a cluster organization based in Rotterdam, the Netherlands, with our broader goal is to accelerate innovation for circular and energy transitions in South Holland, so the most populous region in the Netherlands. We have three key, let's say, characteristics of our cluster that define who we are. The first is that we have a triple helix signature. So we have a membership of about 30 members, innovative startups, larger corporates, technical universities, business schools, but also municipalities, which we bring together in a system of open innovation, and which means open for collaboration, and also our international angle. So our membership of the International Cleantech Network, but also connections with our other international partners through European programs, for example, are really also to provide kind of a window on the world for our region. And we are focusing our activities mainly in the early stage of the innovation funnel. So where you see ideation processes, where consortia are formed, where projects are initiated, that's where we have a role. And with those three kind of signature ingredients, we have developed a toolbox of activities. One of those I will show you just now. And of course, we stand on the whole ecosystem. So of international partners, of other regional partners that are not members, other network organizations, governments, you name it, which are of course needed in also such a complex transition as circular economy, where you need all those different elements from our point of view, at least. My role is that I'm a project manager at Cleantech Delta, mainly focusing on circular economy. So the project I'm presenting now is also one that I was mainly involved in. It's called Circular Dordrecht. So Dordrecht is a municipality of about 1/3 of the size of Rotterdam, also located in the province of Stad. It's also connected to the port area, actually, so it has kind of some industry. Yeah, what we saw from the municipality, which is one of our members, the municipality of Dordrecht, that like many other governments, they have quite some ambitions on circular economy. They want to join the national ambitions of being 50% circular in 2030. so in 10 years, and 100% circular in 2050. But at that stage, this project started beginning of last year, so beginning of 2019. There was not that much insight in, okay, how can we actually get there? So what are ways for us to support this transition as a government, and what can we actually do? So we partnered with one of our, let's say, strategic partners, Metabolic. Maybe familiar to some of you in the circular economy space. They're a consultancy mainly specialized in doing material flow analysis for regions. So, and as we are kind of a market-driven cluster, we said, okay, we shall collaborate, where you will be, let's say, Metabolic will be responsible for the data part, where we will be mainly responsible for the side of the market. So that project started, actually have 4 kind of phases. It started from the material flow analysis that Metabolic mainly did. So they analyzed all the incoming materials going into the different sectors within the municipality. So for example, the built environment sector, they measured, okay, how much concrete, how much water, how much energy, etc. is going in there. And then at the end, what is actually coming out of, for example, demolishing projects or CO2 output. So they really had a metabolism overview of the city, and they datafied that. So from all that data, a couple of sectors with potential came forward, and we started to do our market research. So first we defined ambitions, we defined what are barriers to circularity and potential opportunities. And then in the third stage, the most important stage, I think, we defined ways towards solutions. I will dive into those 2 a little bit more in the market research and ideate stages. So yeah, after the data was gathered and the analysis was done, kind of 3 sectors came forward as having high potential for circularity based on their potential, based on their high environmental impact, and also on their economic potential. So those 3 material streams actually are wood, minerals, and metals. We saw that, for example, for wood, there was not really a lot of activity in the region to use waste wood. It's also actually subsidized to burn it for energy in the Netherlands, which they're changing, but it was still at that time. For metals, we saw that the industry is very international. So most of the metal scrap is actually exported to lower income countries where it's processed. And for minerals, we actually saw the most potential also for the built environment sector, where that is mainly used, for example, materials as concrete with very high environmental impact. So we decided to focus on the built environment sector, and then mainly on the concrete material stream for the further process. And then actually the most interesting part began, where we got out of the analysis part, but actually, okay, so what can we really do? So we had some discussions with key players within the regional value chain of the built environment sector. So on the right top of this slide, you see the circular economy and built environment picture. You kind of see the value chain there. We talked with architects, with housing corporations, construction companies, demolition companies, but also recyclers. We all had them together in a series of roundtable discussions to first define actually the key bottlenecks of the sector. So not only of the organizations, but really of the sector. And then ideate for solutions with those partners together. So how do you see yourself as organization contributing to potential circular solutions? And out of that actually came the idea for kind of an exchange for secondary building materials, a construction hub what we called it, where yeah, materials, components that are taken out of projects, so actually urban mined, if you like to call it, instead of demolished. So those materials are mined, and they can be traded again in a physical marketplace. And we brainstormed about some ideas, for example, toilets were a high potential example, because they can be they could have been taken from a hospital that was demolished and into low-income housing projects. So we defined various opportunities, and then we saw, okay, so the sector has certain the sector itself has certain ambitions and they want to do this, but how can we really get it going? So, and then we said, okay, actually we need to involve the larger value network. So not only the players within the value chain, but also all the key players around it. And this kind of goes back to what I showed first slide, this broader network of players where you have actually knowledge partners that have already been involved in developing circular value chains for the built environment, involving technology providers who can actually recycle concrete and make it reusable as cement again, involving governments, which were in this case already involved, like the municipality of Dordrecht, but also the province, and not least important, also subsidy schemes. So currently it's in the stage that the partners are talking together how to proceed. We are still looking into various subsidy schemes to kind of activate this, but they have come to a consensus about that this is the direction they want to go into as a regional sector. The most important lessons learned as the last slide. Yeah, so in the first market research phase, we found that discussions based on good data really works. So also conservative, fragmented sectors like the construction sector generally is, they were really willing to talk and think with us. Also because you really emphasize the regional benefits and the data underlying that. So what is actually the impact they are making altogether, which is very large. And identifying where the energy is at an early stage, I think is quite an important aspect. So which organizations have a strong mandate to act, but also are energized to work on new initiatives, on innovative projects, and really champion those organizations. In this case, it was one of the smaller, actually, construction renovating companies that was really also pushing this within the sector. And the third point, yeah, involved, let's say, the larger value network that I just explained before, rather sooner than later. So one of our knowledge partners, for example, TNO, they are the national organization for applied research. They do research on a whole scale of topics around societal themes. One of them is circular economy. And they had a program, a subsidized program to, let's say, use their experts within projects for a highly subsidized rate. But we saw that we involved them rather late. So the regional partners were already on the track, like, we can do this ourselves. And that has not yet really proven successful. So I think involving the organizations that can give that first push, also financially, so subsidy schemes, etc., they're really helpful from our perspective. But I guess that's in most sectors the case. For innovation, a good financial scheme can really kickstart things. So those are, let's say, our key lessons. And yeah, I think that's it about the case. If there are any questions for now, we can also answer them. I don't know what's the best way forward, James, or should we have a discussion at the end?
Yeah, I think maybe now, while it's fresh in the mind, we could take 5 minutes or so to see if there's any questions. I think one initial one that came from myself was all about the concept, in the initial concept. Did it come from Dordrecht? How did that relationship spawn this program? And did the municipality fund the whole thing? I.e., was it reactive or proactive? What was the...
Yeah. Yeah, so for us, we work with the membership base. So Dordrecht as a municipality is one of our members. We have different fees and memberships, so startups pay less than large municipalities, obviously. So from this relationship, we constantly kind of promote innovation activities, and we are always on top of, let's say, knowing what's the demand there. So what are they looking for in innovation? So we knew that they wanted to get circular, but didn't really know what is the way.
Yeah.
And our director already had a working relationship with the director of metabolic. And then he suggested to kind of make a proposal for Dordrecht together. So yeah,
Right.
that's how it happened.
Okay. And just curious because to see whether you would just focus on one member, because of course it takes time and effort for you as a cluster to put resources in. It's only to the benefit of one member. That's why I was wondering if there was other financing outside of the general membership that was covering the costs.
Well, we also try to involve other members. So, for example, TNO, we've tried to involve as, let's say, from the knowledge side, and then in the implementation, for example, New Horizon, they're an urban mining company, and they've also developed a technology that can recycle concrete. So we've also set up talks between them and the municipality, and they've actually done 2 assignments already for the municipality, 2 projects where they have analyzed the potential of 2 municipal buildings, the old city house, city council, and an old tax office, and they have made a report and analysis of the potential of reusing those materials for the municipality.
Awesome. Thank you for answering, Eli. Maybe I could open it up to somebody from one of the attendees. You're all able to unmute yourselves and speak. You could raise a hand if you didn't want to just jump up above the parapets. Otherwise, in the short run, while I allow you to think about your question, there's been a question in the Q&A from Elsa, which is about materials are only one aspect of circular economy. Do you also integrate other aspects such as circular design, etc.? And I don't...
Yeah.
You can go.
Yeah. So yeah, good point. I really agree. And I think in this project specifically, we found design in architecture. So we found a regional architect firm that was pretty motivated to also contribute, but we still found it difficult for them to have a concrete role, because if you look at the solution that we proposed, the exchange of secondary materials, the role of the architect there is quite limited. So they didn't have really a prominent role yet, but I think it's important to involve them, especially when you look at larger projects, for example, when you are actually building large, let's say, apartment complexes or something, then the role of the architect in the beginning of the funnel is just really, really relevant. So I agree there are quite some components, social component, also the digital component of how you facilitate this structure of a marketplace. So we're also still looking at that. So it's also still work in progress. But yeah, definitely various components.
Yeah. And do you think you'll replicate this then with other municipalities? Is that the plan going forward?
Good point. So we actually only have 3 governments that we work closely with: Dordrecht, Rotterdam, and the province of South Holland. Rotterdam is a bit further. They have also an innovation department. They have a circular economy program, really defined their own themes and innovation pathways that they want to support. So they're a bit further, and this approach would not be relevant for them anymore. But perhaps we can work with other smaller municipalities in the future. Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. And hopefully, as an outcome of this, we'll see some replications of this in other regions. But I'll see if anyone else wants to speak.
Yeah, and if there are any other questions at a later stage where you're thinking of doing something like this in your region, always feel free to reach out and ask for the slides or any other questions.
Yeah, it'd be really nice if we could share the slides at the end. I'll just ask all of you for the go ahead, and we can share it out with the group as well. That was really good. And if anyone has any more questions, most of you know Eli quite well, so you can take it up going forward. Maybe then I can just say thanks a lot, Eli. That was really
perfect. Yeah,
and thorough.
Pleasure. Great.
And I can hand it over to Emmanuel down in South Africa. He's in the peak of summer right now, so he's, I'm sure, going to be very happy.
Hello, everyone. My name is Emmanuel, representing GreenCape here in South Africa. We are the first African clean tech cluster member of the ICN. So the company that I work for, GreenCape, is an NPO that was set up to drive the green economy within the Western Cape by looking at barriers to establishing such an economy and how that can be overcome. So, but today I'm not here to speak about GreenCape. I'm here to speak about one of the programs that we're running called the Western Cape Industrial Symbiosis Program. So the Western Cape is a province in South Africa. And so pre-2013, just to give a bit of background, pre-2013, the province was grappling with some issues around rising unemployment levels, landfills running out of airspace, and generally the economy wasn't doing so well. So they were looking for interventions to try and stimulate that economy. So they identified industrial symbiosis as an ideal tool to try and address some of these issues in the short term by sort of trying to divert waste from going to landfill and encouraging and supporting any interventions that divert material from going to landfill through exploring alternative waste treatment options brought about by industrial symbiosis. I'm just going to try and share my screen now.
Perfect.
All right. Are you able to see my slides?
Yes, yep, we've got it up there. That's great.
Okay, awesome. All right, so I'm just going to speak to who we are, how we work, and the impact that we've had so far with the Western Cape Industrial Symbiosis Program. So as I mentioned earlier, GreenCape is a non-profit organization set up to drive the green economy within the Western Cape and South Africa as a whole. So we work at the interface between government, industry, and academia. We relay information between the three parties and just try to bridge the commission gap between those three entities. Just to create the triple helix sort of integration and collaboration. So the Western Cape Industrial Symbiosis Program, the work that I'm here to speak about is a free facilitation service that was as a program that was set up to encourage companies to be more resource efficient. And how we work is we identify any underutilized materials that companies have. So our focus is mostly on the manufacturing sector. So we identify anything that companies have that is underutilized, that is mostly their waste, their byproducts, or anything that is not fully utilized. It could be equipment that's not being fully utilized. And we try to identify any other companies that can make use of those materials. So one company's waste ends up being another company's resource. So that's just like in nature where the notion of waste doesn't exist. That's what we're trying to do. So we try to divert waste from going to landfill and try to make sure that at least the companies, there's some sort of benefit that they get from these synergies that they're doing. But we've actually gone beyond just doing industrial symbiosis, because with RS, you are trying to optimize like nodes, like little company size, but we've actually gone beyond that. You're now actually looking at all areas, what we call system optimization. So we've actually done material flow analysis for some industrial areas in the Western Cape, where we are looking at material flows in those areas, trying to understand the activities in those areas, and then looking for determining interventions that can be implemented in those areas to optimize those areas. It could be something like, oh yeah, let's get a shared wastewater treatment facility in the area. Could be something as simple as, oh, we need a bank to be in that area, soft services, because maybe a lot of employees in that area tend to travel maybe during lunch. They spend 3 hours going outside the area to go to a bank, so just going to something that's close by. So those are the things, some things that we're looking at. So the program is funded by City of Cape Town. Previously, it was funded by the Western Cape government, but now it's being widely funded by City of Cape Town since 2016, delivered by GreenCape, as I mentioned before. And we collaborate with the Western Cape government, National Cleanup Production Center, and International Synergies Limited, which actually runs the UK Industrial Symbiosis program. And this is how we work. What we're trying to achieve in the Western Cape and South Africa is we're trying to create, or rather establish, a network of companies that get to share resources for resource efficiency. And how we do that is we try and capture information that we get from companies. We do this via what we call business opportunity workshops. That is where we invite about 50 companies or so, invite them to a workshop, sit them around tables, 10 companies around the table, then try to match resources between the companies that are generating certain waste streams and companies that can use those waste streams as resources in their processes. And we also do one-on-one site visits where we go to company sites. We sit down with the operation managers, understand operations, and try to find ways of optimizing the processes on that site. And all the data that we collect from companies, we've got a database called Synergy. So that's where we store all our data. It's very secure. Only the waste facilitators have access to it. So we just store data there. And then we also use it to identify matches between, because you can actually quickly match between something that's been generated and something that's wanted somewhere else. So you can actually start making matches quickly, and we try to facilitate negotiations between, once we've identified these sort of synergies in idea phase, we try and speak to the companies to get them to sit together and talk to each other and progress those synergies to completion. We develop summary reports for the synergies that have been implemented, because we use that as proof to our funders that the program actually works. And we also try to measure our impact on an aggregated level. So just to give you an example, the program as it stands at the moment, we have more than 1,000 companies in the network, quite diverse, all sectors in the manufacturing space. So we work with any companies regardless of size or operations. We already have about 8,000 underutilized resources on that database, and by that I'm talking about waste streams that are being disposed of landfills. I'm talking about capacity issues where the equipment that's just sitting not being utilized to 100% utilization. We're looking at stuff like reverse logistics, where you have companies that transport stuff to point B, the truck goes there, full, comes back empty, and could actually leverage, and the neighbor also does the opposite of that, where they have a truck going empty and coming back full, and they can actually collaborate on logistics around that. So if you look at our numbers, our KPIs, we've managed to divert around 109,000 tons from landfills since 2014. And if you look at additional revenue and cost savings of about 6,875,000, those are accrued to the companies that are in our network that have participated in the synergies. And we're talking about additional revenue. We're talking about when companies are able to make money from their waste streams, maybe by charging a certain fee to the off-taker. Cost savings, that's about companies avoiding landfill costs, avoiding transport costs to landfills, also substituting their raw material with alternative raw material which is cheaper coming from so-called waste streams. And then we also talk about private investments, where companies have actually invested, either start a new entity that's valorizing a waste stream, or they've actually expanded their businesses, or they've done something, optimize their processes, and they've actually put money into that. And if we look at fossil greenhouse gas savings, we've got a very robust carbon calculator that we use to calculate the carbon savings from all the exchanges that happen between companies. Currently, we're sitting at above 309,200 tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. So just to give you, to paint some that you can actually understand, that's equivalent to 37 2.2 megawatt wind turbines, or equivalent of 83,440 South African households' electrical consumption for a year. And around job creation, we've had 69 permanent employment created, about 25 temporary jobs that have come out of this, to 18 economy-wide jobs have also come out of this. So these are things that we've managed to, the number could actually be more, but these are numbers that I've actually, the feedback that we've gotten from companies around job creation. So, yeah. So just to I've picked random case studies from the work that we've done, so that you actually get an idea of how industrial synthesis actually works. So how we actually get to that 100,000 tons of waste material diverted from landfill. So this is how it works. We work with different companies. For example, if you look at some of these successes that we're looking at, we had two chemical companies. One was a paint company, one was a chemicals company. So with the chemicals company, usually they have made, like I think every 3 months or so, they dispose of or discard of material that's about to expire or that is already expired. And usually goes to law, costing them an arm and a leg. And they usually just mix up that stuff and put it in an abandoned area for disposal. But they were looking for a more sustainable solution to disposing of those solvents. And we spoke to a company that does paint, that manufactures paints, and they have a solvent recovery facility on their site using vacuum distillation and all. So we connected them to the chemicals company. They collected drums of mixed solvents, and they managed to recover all the separate the solvents into their separate purities, and they actually use most of that solvents on their plant as solvents on their, like paint. The solvents are used in their paint production. So that exchange alone, where 64 drums, 200-liter drums were taken by the paint company. The chemicals company saved about 23,200 tons when they avoided disposal, and then 4 tons was diverted from going to landfill. There was 9,700 tons carbon dioxide equivalent that was from that exchange, reduction in CO2 emissions from that. Then we look at the example that we called Leaf to Pump Again. So this was between one of the big petrochem companies and another company that was set up to sort of refurbish petrol pumps from service stations. So what happened is, like, every year the petroleum company, it has several service stations, what they call garages in South Africa, and I think each year they decommission about 100 or so fuel pumps, and these are usually just stored in storage for disposal. And so what we did is we put them in touch with a company called Savannah Solutions, which does the refurbishment. And what these guys do is that they'll collect these old pumps, they'll segregate them into the different components, and then try to refurbish them into new into new fuel pumps. It's sort of like an upcycling sort of process. So just within that, with that exchange, where I think it was around 425 pumps that were taken by the refurbishment company, the petrochems company managed to save about 2.4 million from not disposing of the old petrol pumps. And I think it was almost like a 30% saving when they actually buy the new pumps from the refurbishment company. And the refurbished company actually managed to make about 4 million rand in additional revenue from those refurbished fuel pumps that they made. There were 5 permanent jobs that were created through that exchange. Then if we look at the example which is quite interesting. So just to show that, our work is quite diverse, we don't discriminate against any sort of synergies. This is quite a small one, but we call the Battery Saga, where we worked with a theater here in Cape Town. So this theater, they use batteries for their mics. And I think you can understand, if you have mics in a theater, you wouldn't want the battery to be run flat. So I think they have like a time period where they use them, then they discard them before the batteries go flat. So what we did is we looked for a solution, people that could actually take those batteries, because they still had a lot of charge in them. So so we found numerous entities that could take these batteries, like at Children's Haven, an old age home. We're taking like about 60 batteries each. I think we have about 2,000 batteries that are available. We've also spoken to the City of Cape Town disaster risk management departments, and they're also interested in taking some of these batteries so they could use them in their torches and their walkie-talkies. There's actually quite a lot of potential to replicate this sort of synergy in all theaters across Cape Town and South Africa as a whole. So we're actually working on that. There was actually 21,000 rand saving from the battery that was accrued to the theaters by not disposing of the 2,000 or so batteries that they had, and a 0.128 tons diversion from landfill. And then another interesting case study that we...
Emmanuel, would it be all right if I jumped in, just in interest of time? If how many more slides and examples are you thinking about looking at?
I think there's about 4 left, but I can just jump straight to some of the lessons that we've learned as well.
Yeah, maybe. Okay. I think that would be a good idea. Perfect.
Good stuff. All right, interesting examples.
We can share these with everyone afterwards. Sorry for interrupting.
No, it's fine. I understand that. So just the lessons that we've learned trying to implement synergies. There are quite a lot of barriers why some of the work that we are trying to achieve is actually working out. So there are legislative issues that we face, technical issues, logistical issues, capacity issues. And just to give you a bit more detail, I think, so around technical issues, we're looking at the quality of the resources that we want to valorize, right? Sometimes the material is contaminated, and that means the cost of actually getting it to a quality, that's suitable to actually put in a processing plant might actually outweigh, is actually more than somebody just trying to discard the stuff at landfill. So upgrading this material to higher quality specification cannot be done economically for some of these materials. And there's also issues around the lack of technology. So there's some tech that's either in pilot phase or doesn't exist yet to sort of try and valorize some of these materials. And then there are also issues around resource availability. Sometimes you need economies of scale to actually get something to be viable. So the economies actually collapse the business case for some of the work that we're trying to do. And then also issues around confidence. There's also the perception that material made from recycled material is inferior to material made from virgin material. So that's something that we actually need to work on and conscientize people that sometimes it's actually of the same quality. So legislative issues that we've come across where there's a lot of lack of understanding with regards to legislation. There's a lot of misinformation, and interpretation of different regulations actually quite different depending on who you talk to. So that needs to be aligned. And there's also a feeling around the industry that some of the regulation, that there's over-regulation, which actually still falls, or rather, that doesn't leave room for experimentation or innovation. And then we also had economic barriers that we looked at, where businesses were not really willing to put any money into anything that is not their core business. And because the goal is just to make money. So anything that doesn't make the money is usually just discarded and be shelved for later. And then there are also issues around economies of scale, where you always need a certain throughput and output that's required to merit an investment. And then issues around access to investment for most SMMEs. they don't have access to affordable investment capital, and that actually hampers enterprise development and investment in new technologies. Issues around logistics. Logistics is still very expensive. Moving goods from point A to point B is still very costly for most companies. So you'll find sometimes the transport costs alone actually outweigh the benefits of valorizing that material. And then also capacity issues around companies, where you actually find companies don't have dedicated capacity as a human resource to actually tackle some of these problems. So I think that's about it from my side. Let me just check if there are any questions. Okay.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel. That was really, really good, thorough presentation. And I really like that second last slide. It's something I'd like to share it with everyone to have a look at. Of course, the contexts are quite different in every country, but some lessons to be learned. And I put a question in, and maybe it's a silly question, but I wondered what the uptake was with the companies that you reach out to. Is it really easy just to approach a company and say, we want to try and improve your waste, or valorize your waste potentially? How do they respond to that usually? Is it quite a lot of effort just to build up this network?
I think so. So it was initially a little bit more difficult, but I think we quickly learned that we just have to tailor a language to a language that businesses understand. So our approach is always from a business point of view, where we work out the numbers, where like you can actually save money, you can actually improve your bottom line. So the concepts are actually quite easy to understand. People are actually willing to engage once they understand there is potential to save money or make money from implementation of industrial symbiosis.
Totally. And do the companies then, sorry, just a follow up, do the companies then reach out to you with their waste streams that they have, or do you proactively do research for them, let's say, or how does that go?
So it's a little bit of both. Sometimes we actually get companies reaching out to us because they've heard about us one way or the other, and they reach out to us with looking for assistance with their waste streams. But in most cases, our approach is really proactive. So like for each year, we actually sit down and we decide at least at a minimum, we need to engage about 100 companies. So it's a little bit of, yeah.
All right, thanks.
Yeah.
How does this relate maybe to one of the other panelists, to industrial symbiosis that you've seen in your region or other regions? Do you see such projects at such a scale, or programs to such a scale, such an extent? I mean, engaging with like theatres and foundries, all sorts of different things. Eli, do you know what the case is in Rotterdam, or maybe Nicolai in other regions?
Yeah, just to speak for Rotterdam, I know there is a talk, a monthly kind of discussion between industrial partners and the Regional Development Agency, in which our director actually also takes part. It's more related to, let's say, the industry in the port area, so it's quite regional. And it's mainly focused on identifying relevant innovators for our region that could solve existing waste problems. So there are overarching activities.
Yeah, I can add to that. I mean, mostly with an eye on Kenya, where we have an office, or in Singapore and in Copenhagen. So Singapore, definitely, this is an agenda that moves a lot. Haven't seen exactly the same there, but various small pockets and attempts to do the same, but it's a new thing in Singapore. In Kenya, they would, I immediately, Emmanuel, feel like connecting you to our networking in Kenya. They are talking about a lot about this, but they are not at all this far with their ambitions as you guys are. So we can get back to that maybe, but there's a lot of stuff going on in Nairobi around the Kenya Association of Manufacturers, and the circular economy whole agenda is really exploding this month with new initiatives. So I guess a lot to learn from you guys in Cape Town.
Awesome. Are there any other questions from the crowd? Maybe I know David Hutchinson's with us today. Don't mean to put you on the spot. Maybe you're still in your pajamas. I'll hand it then over to yourself, Nicolai, if you would like to take on the final case study from today and tell us a bit more about what you've been up to.
I'd be happy to, and let me see if I can share my screen. Do you see my screen now?
Yes, I can see your screen.
Good. Yeah, so thanks for inviting, James. Happy to be here. And for those who don't know me, since I'm not representing a cluster organization, I better tell you who I am. So I used to be in a Copenhagen Clean Tech cluster, now Clean, as you all know. So part of the founding guys in the old days with Copenhagen Clean Tech cluster, even with ICN actually. So I'm really pleased to be here this this morning in this wonderful company with ICN clusters. So basically, Quercus Group, and so moving into the case, really is my own little small consultancy. We are 9 people spread from Nairobi, Singapore, and Copenhagen, specialized in circular economy and green transition through collaboration and partnerships. So we run trainings in circular economy and green growth for public clients, also for private clients. We recently ran a circular economy training for industry leaders in Kenya. So that's just to give you an idea about our kind of activities. But I'm gonna move back to the actual case here. So I wanted to share, I mean, with the ICN hat on here, a case really where we have, together with great partners, starting with asking ourselves, how do we really overcome, as many of talk about every day, the challenge that each of the cities, I mean, in the world are facing towards circular economy and green transition. So this is not a new question to ask, right? But we really wanted to overcome the moving from the talking and the ambitions to really an operational level. So there's a lot of hackathons and innovation competitions, which is great. But we really wanted to find out how could we really get the companies on board here. How could we make a really company focused initiative here that could really bridge market opportunities or demand in one city to companies in another city. So that's the questions we started out asking ourselves. Also, we asked ourselves, how do we overcome the barrier of really, I mean, especially looking at the SMEs, it's always a barrier for them to move far, at least if the opportunities are not very concrete and very much on a silver plate. So really, that was also one of the questions we wanted to answer here. So what we ended up doing was to design a program called Access Cities, meaning how do companies access cities with all the great solutions, and how do we help each other across cities to really solve these big issues related to green transition and circular economy.
Oh, I've lost Nicolai. I don't know if anyone else
is. Which is very fun. I come back to the business model. Oh,
You're back.
I'm back. Thank God. Yeah. So this is a program we're focusing on 5 cities: New York, Singapore, Munich, Copenhagen, and Aarhus. Aarhus is the second largest city of Denmark. And really the idea is to connect not just the cities, but really demand from one city to solution providers from another city. 100% focused on companies. So the big question is, how do we get the companies to really get into the right circles in these cities? From our side, we are managing Singapore, and as you probably know, circular economy is also really a hot topic in Singapore. They have a fairly new zero waste strategy there. Not going to bother you with all the details, but they're really keen on learning from also solution providers from abroad. That's how they have always been doing in Singapore. That's also how they do it today. Really open for international inspiration, and they got the money if they find the right thing, right? So to speak. So how to get there? So what we did really was to design a program where we have secret funding to have boots on the ground, meeting a full-time person working in Singapore to basically be a vacuum cleaner on behalf of Danish companies here. So the vacuum cleaner function called Alan, he was supposed to be here, but he's in another meeting, my colleague Alan. Every day he's basically running around in Singapore, really building trust and relations and looking into one thing is what he can hear and read, but another thing is how do we actually find his way into the different opportunities and circles there. So what we do there in concrete terms is once he finds something through an organization, it could be a private estate owner, it could be a public utility and so on. We offer what we call handheld company support, meaning we based on the different challenges we find, we identify individual companies, in this case on the Danish side, and then we try to understand that company, and really the handheld comes in by really then taking the company in the hand and take it to Singapore. These days, of course, not physically with COVID, but really to individually understand how can this company actually come into and hit the heart of the right buyer in Singapore, because that's always the problem that we have experienced. We get all the opportunities. We have a lot of relations, but none of us have really the time to set aside full-time dedication to individual companies unless, of course, there's money behind, right? So this is a program, by the way, funded by the Industry Foundation, which then pays us to actually full-time work on behalf of these companies and massage them into the market opportunities related to circular economy in Singapore. So everybody is happy. We are happy, of course, as a company, but not least the companies are happy because they suddenly overcome the price issue of exploring something so far away as Singapore or New York or Munich. And the Singaporeans are even happy because they get on the silver plate served potential solution, and they can basically pick and choose. If they find something they like, they are happy and can engage with these companies directly, right? So currently we are working with 11 companies simultaneously, where after a long kind of screening process and dialogues with both sides, taking down to 11 companies where there's mutual interest in Singapore and in the companies of this side expanding to Singapore and the Singaporean side to actually invite these companies on board to solve some of their very concrete issues, being in public tenders, being it as a sub-supplier to private consultancy or estate owners who are construction companies. So all kinds of various cases where we found the matches between somebody looking for something specific and somebody in Denmark having that on the shelf, right? So this is the short version, at least, of the Access Cities, where I thought it might be inspiring, since we are also looking into the next phase here. By the way, going to look into more cities also. Really might be inspiring also for all the great projects and of the ICN, which is also, I know, about connecting like this, not just companies I know, but also companies where I remember, at least from my time, it's a constant issue to have enough time to sniff off the market opportunities on behalf of all kinds of other markets, right, or companies. This is one way to at least try to get around that. Last comment would be second phase where we are talking about the business model for the ongoing access cities, which probably will be a combination of philanthropical funding, but also money, whether it's been from funds or a public or private entities in the respective markets. So in Singapore, it's going to be a big foundation combined with some of the bigger private companies who are willing to actually pay somebody like the Access Cities platform to connect them to interesting solutions from abroad, because this is in Singapore very much the mindset. I'm sure the model is going to be different in different cities, because the mindset and traditions are different in these different cities. So Munich definitely not going to do like this, whereas Singapore is doing this. New York is going to be a third version. But the point is, funding from both sides of the table, or from the participating cities, and then some overall collective funding to support the they call it the secretariat or the coordination of it. Right. Sake of time, I better stop here.
Thank you very much. That was really nice to hear, and I think it's been an interesting sequence of going from small example in one place, a bigger sort of example. Now we're looking at kind of international level, and I was just wondering, because this is so founded on the relationships you have. For example, you've got an office in Singapore and a person there. With the expansion of a program like this, how do you see going to a new city or a new region? Was there the need to have a local partner to drive this activity, or how do you, for example, with New York, what's been the relationship there?
Yeah, so definitely the approach is to have a strong local partner with the network and the knowledge about how to do stuff in that respective market. So in our case, we had the office in Singapore. Of course, we might do it through our office in Nairobi. There might be something for us, but to broaden it out, yeah, definitely a local player there with the right network. In Singapore, we have a Singaporean. In New York is local people also. Some Danes, but in that case, somebody who had been living there for a long time. And the ongoing discussion is really, as we look into expansion, might just be any, strong partner there. It doesn't need to be Danish, because we call this also global alliance. So it could be equally interesting for Singapore to connect to Munich, or in the future South Korea to connect to Singapore, right? It doesn't need to be Danish in the next phase. I think that's a very important also policy we have been taking.
And I guess if for example the Singaporeans are paying as well, they might want to say, hey, we want to see not just Danish companies, we want to see a wide range of companies from anywhere.
Exactly. That's definitely, if you ask any Singaporean, that's definitely their interest. Denmark is so tiny, right? They like some of the stuff we do, but we are so tiny, and even from ourselves, to make our value proposition better, the more we could expose from, so they get the best, and everybody would be the winner in the end, right? And sometimes it would be Danish, sometimes it would be from somewhere else. The best way, right? So I think that's important. So it doesn't. If you look at the demand in Singapore, they don't care whether it's Danish as long as it helps them, right? Yeah.
When you're thinking of this next phase, and I'm thinking of who are strong locally operating partners that have the sort of networks, and in Rotterdam, someone like Eli, and in South Africa, someone like Emmanuel. Could there be opportunities there going forward that actually
definitely
clusters are great facilitators of these types of things?
Exactly, I couldn't agree more. As an old cluster guy, and we haven't. Of course, there's a steering committee or a working group looking into markets. If you ask me, definitely some of the markets. South Africa and Holland would be super relevant. I think, and also many others in the ICN network. Of course, this is not my decision alone, but I think it's relevant really to tell each other, and because I'm also in the steering committee, to really say if this is something that could be interesting to discuss further, we could definitely do that. And it's going to go on for the next kind of 4 to 6 months. So the timing would even be perfect.
Yeah. And I think actually something genuine to take home and consider, because I think quite a lot of the clusters here are doing this work with the cities in any way that maybe there could be potential for collaboration.
Yeah.
Would be really good. But I've kind of taken it a little bit away from how you've driven the process, and I know that we were time limited today, so I don't know if maybe Eli or Emmanuel or anyone from the crowd wanted to ask any questions about the process. You know, even in terms of formatting, is it like workshops or is it one-to-one matchmaking? At least from my side, that would be an interesting thought to hear on.
Yeah. So process-wise, I mean, there are various activities in the Access Cities platform. So there's also, you know, open innovation competitions and all this, where we take more companies at one time and really, like I know also ICN has been doing also and C40 and all this kind of, you know, which is great, and you know, so that's one where I guess many of us know that kind of discipline of spending time on understanding the challenge, then going home and invite, you know, or spread the word, and then facilitate that whole kind of journey. The handholding, I think, is a little, that's the new thing for us at least, which is really a lot of local business development work, where you don't necessarily know what comes out of the meetings you have in a day, where you invite yourself for coffee with the public utility board, which is a water utility in Singapore. You ask questions, you learn, you realize, okay, so this is something they are working on. It could also be the Ministry of Environment or something there. And then suddenly you bump into something, wow, here's, in this case, something which I know is a competency in Denmark. That's something to dig into. And then that's where you start, you know, digging more and follow up and really narrowing and ask more questions until the point where you really understand, okay, they're serious. And that's where you go back to the Danish side, where we have partners, State of Green, Confederation, the Danish industry, and tell them, okay, so you guys have members. How do you, like any cluster also, so how could you activate your members here? Who would be the right ones? And I know actually, by the way, that Clean is part of one of the challenges in New York, also activating members there, which is really going well, I know. So that's an example where we then activate the Danish landscape and say who would be the right 7 or 10 companies here to then for us to interview, and through that we would scan and understand, okay, some are not interested, you know, see you next year. Some are maybes, they need a little more, you know, time to think, and some are super ready, and then we basically individually follow up with them and say, so what are you, try to understand them, and what are you keen on looking into Singapore? Are you experienced already? Are you already connected to somebody? Have you had projects there? So individually, again, is the keyword here, because there's no one size fits all for, like if you talk companies, they have all individual. Some want just 3 clients lined up, otherwise they won't participate. Others are more exploratory, say, yeah, let's spend some time on this, and maybe participate even in an open innovation call, right? So it's very individual. I guess that's the key word, which requires, you know, that business development mindset and driving the car as you drive, building the car as you drive it sometimes, right? To really react to both sides kind of statements.
Awesome. I don't know if there's any other questions to come out, but I know we've also run a bit over time and some people have had to drop off. So I just wanted to say thank you very much to the 3 of you for taking the time out of your day to share this with everybody.